Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I appreciate you coming back, and if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. I try to do things a little different on this channel than every other Bigfoot channel. I'm actually going to show you the locations of these incidents with Google Earth satellite technology. I think I'm the only one out there doing this, so I hope you enjoy it. What we got going on today is another classic Sasquatch Bigfoot encounter story. This one is the classic story on the slopes of Mount St. Helens in 1924, the famous Ape Canyon Bigfoot attack that happened to Fred Beck and his mining partners. Now, I also, besides the encounter here, I also have an interview that Roger Patterson did with Fred Beck, and I'm going to read that interview to you. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer video. Hope you guys enjoy it, but before we get into it, I'm going to go ahead and show you these locations so you guys can keep track of everything that's going on when I talk about the incident. So let me go ahead and show you these locations. Okay, so this is the area, guys, where this famous Ape Canyon incident occurred. You guys see Mount St. Helens there, and you see how the northern flank of the volcano has been blown out in 1980. And you guys can see this lake right here. That's Spirit Lake. That's also talked about in the incident. I'm going to go ahead and zoom on in here, and I'll zoom on into Ape Canyon. Ape Canyon is right there. You guys can see. Now let me kick this into 3D, and we'll zoom on in there a little bit closer for you. So this is the flat area right there, guys, where I think that cabin sat. According to the clues that I found, they said they came 700 feet down a mountain, and if they came from Spirit Lake, which is north of us there, and they came over this mountaintop here, they would have to rappel 700 feet down to this flat spot there. Now, there are other shows like Expedition X and all that say that the cabin was actually down on this cliff side over here, like way down here, and there's no way, guys. I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, look how steep that is. Do you think that they would put a cabin on the side of that cliff right there somewhere? No, they weren't going to do that. And it says it's on the north side of Ape Canyon, and on the show Expedition X, they actually went to the south side of Ape Canyon, and they looked like, I believe, like right in here or somewhere like that.
Wait, look right there. So I see a little flat area. It's this area right here, anywhere along that ridge.
So they didn't follow the clues very well on that show. And according to what Fred Beck says about, and I don't want to ruin the story for you, but according to what Fred Beck says about things that occurred, the only logical spot for the cabin to be would be right there. Right there on that flat area of that ledge, I guess you would call it. And you guys can see the precipice right here, and he was talking about a precipice that, and I don't want to give the story away, but just remember when he talks about a precipice, something happened with the creature on the precipice. So in my opinion, he's talking about right there. You see how that is? So once again, in my opinion, and it's hard to prove this because the cabin isn't there unless someone goes to this location with a metal detector, in my opinion, the cabin sat right here on this little ledge, I guess you could call it. That's where they built the cabin. Now look, you guys can see how much area has been transformed from the volcanic eruption. But thankfully, Ape Canyon wasn't hit so bad. Ape Canyon wasn't, the top of Ape Canyon was, as you guys can see, but Ape Canyon itself wasn't hit as bad as the rest on the north side. And even a little bit further south here, you guys can see where all that ash flowed down through, right through there, but nothing compared to the north side over here, guys. The north side over here, man. And there's a story about an old guy that lived in one of these cabins down there on the north side, and they begged him to leave. And he said, "I'm not leaving anywhere." And you know what? He didn't leave. He's buried right in that area, right in here. So that's kind of a sad story. But hey, He didn't want to go anywhere. That was his home. Didn't work out so well for him. Alright, now that I've showed you those locations, let me go ahead and get into this incident. And then remember, after I read the incident, I'm going to go ahead and read that interview between Roger Patterson when he interviewed Fred Beck. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, make sure you hit that like button for me. Alright, let's do it. First of all, I would wish to give an account of the attack and tell of the famous incident of July 1924 when the hairy apes attacked our cabin. We had been prospecting for 6 years in the Mount St. Helens and Lewis River area in southwest Washington. We had, from time to time, come across large tracks by creek beds and springs. In 1924, I and 4 other miners were working our gold claim, the Vander White. It was 2 miles east of Mount St. Helens near a deep canyon now named Ape Canyon, which was so named after an account of the incident reached the newspapers. Hank, a great hunter and good woodsman, was always a little apprehensive after seeing the tracks. The tracks were large, and we knew that no known animal could have made them. The largest measured 19 inches long. It was in the middle of July, and we had received a good assay on our claim, and everybody was excited. I remember I had a tooth that was aching, and I suggested to Hank that he should take me to town to see a dentist, but he was so enthused in the prospects of the gold mine, he barely took time to answer me. He replied that God or the devil could not get him away from there. We had all come up in his Ford, and I had no way to get to town unless he took me. So when we went back to our cabin on the north side of the canyon, I had a nagging toothache and a little appetite for our evening meal of beans and hotcakes. Hank, though apprehensive, was still determined. We had been hearing noises in the evening for about a week. We heard a shrill, peculiar whistling each evening. We would hear it coming from one ridge and then hear an answering whistling from another ridge. We also heard a sound which I could best describe as a booming, thumping sound, just like something was hitting itself on its chest. Hank asked me to accompany him to the spring about 100 yards from our cabin to get some water, and suggested we take our rifles to be on the safe side. We walked to the spring, and then Hank yelled and raised his rifle, and at that instant I saw it. It was a hairy creature, and he was about 100 yards away, on the other side of a little canyon, standing by a pine tree. It dodged behind the tree and poked its head out from the side of the tree, and at the same time Hank shot. I could see the bark fly out from the tree from each of his 3 shots. Someone may say that that was quite a distance to see the bark fly, but I saw it. The creature I judged to have been about 7 feet tall with blackish brown hair. It disappeared from our view for a short time, but then we saw it running fast and upright about 200 yards down the little canyon. I shot 3 times before it disappeared from view. We took the water back to the cabin and explained the affair to the rest of the party, and we all agreed, including Hank, to go home the next morning, as it would be dark before we could get to the car. We agreed it would be unsound to be caught by darkness on the way out. Darkness found us in our pine log cabin. We had built the cabin ourselves and had made it very sturdy. It stood for years afterwards and was visited by many sightseers until a few years ago when it was burned to the ground. The circumstances of the fire I do not recall. In the cabin we had a long bunk bed in which 2 could sleep, feet to feet, the rest of us sleeping on pine boughs on the floor. At one end of the cabin we had a fireplace fashioned out of rocks. There were no windows in the cabin, so darkness found all of us in the cabin, more calm now, and my tooth was better. Somehow the excitement seemed to work a temporary cure on it. We were sitting around, puffing on pipes, and talking about the trip home the next day. Each of us settled down in his crude but welcomed bed and soon fell asleep. About midnight we were all awakened. Hank, who was sleeping on the floor, was yelling and kicking, but the noise that had awakened us was a tremendous thud against the cabin wall. Some of the chinking had been knocked loose from between the logs and had fell across Hank's chest. He had his rifle in his hand and was waving it back and forth as he kicked and yelled. Hank always slept with his gun nearby. It was a Remington automatic, my gun being a .30-30 Winchester, which I still have. I helped to get the chinking off of him, and he jumped to his feet. Then we heard a great commotion outside. It sounded like a great number of feet trampling and rattling over a pile of our unused shakes. We grabbed our guns. Hank squinted through the space left by the chinking. By actual count, we only saw 3 of the creatures together at one time, but it sounded like there were very many more. This was the start of the famous attack, of which so much has been written about in Washington and Oregon papers throughout the years. Most accounts tell of giant boulders being hurled against the cabin, and say some even fell through the roof, but this was not quite the case. There were very few large rocks around in that area. It is true that many smaller ones were hurled at the cabin, but they did not break through the roof, but hit with a bang and rolled off. Some did fall through the chimney of the fireplace, though. Some accounts state I was hit in the head by a rock and knocked unconscious. This is not true. The only time we shot our guns that night was when the creatures were attacking our cabin. When they would quiet down for a few minutes, we would quit shooting. I told the rest of the party that maybe if they saw we were only shooting when they attacked, they might realize we were only defending ourselves. We could have had clear shots at them through the opening left by the chinking had we chosen to shoot. We did shoot, however, when they climbed up on our roof. We shot round after round through the roof. We had to brace the huge log door with a long pole taken from the bunk bed. The creatures were pushing against it, and the whole door vibrated from the impact. We responded by firing many more rounds through the door. They pushed against the wall of the cabin as if trying to push the cabin over, but this was pretty much an impossibility. As previously stated, the cabin was a sturdy made building. Hank and I did most of the shooting. The rest of the party crowded to the far end of the cabin, guns in their hands. One had a pistol, which is still in my family's possession. The others clutched their rifles. They seemed stunned and incredulous. The attack continued the remainder of the night, with only short intervals in between. A most profound and frightening experience occurred when one of the creatures, being close to the cabin, reached an arm through the chinking space and seized one of our axes by the handle. A much written about incident, and a true one. Before the thing could pull the axe out, I swiftly turned the head of the axe upright so that it caught on the logs, and at the same time Hank shot, barely missing my hand. The creature let go, and I pulled the handle back in and put the axe in a safe place. A humorous thing I will remember was Hank singing, "If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, and we'll all go home in the morning." He did not mean it to be humorous, for Hank was dead serious, and sang under the impression that the mountain devils, as he called them, might understand and go away. The attack ended just before daylight. Just as soon as we were sure it was light enough to see, we came cautiously out of the cabin. It was not long before I saw one of the ape-like creatures standing about 80 yards away near the edge of the Ape Canyon. I shot 3 times, and it toppled over the cliff, down into the gorge, some 400 feet below. Then Hank said we should get out of there as soon as possible, and not bother to pack our supplies or equipment out. After all, he said, it's better to lose them than lose our lives. We were all only too glad to agree. We brought out only that which we could get in our pack sacks. We left about $200 in supplies, powder, and drilling equipment behind. I tried to persuade everyone not to relate the happenings to anyone, and they agreed, but Hank soon let the cat out of the bag. We made our way to Spirit Lake, and Hank went into the ranger station. He had told the ranger earlier about the tracks, and the ranger had replied, "Let me know if you find out what they are." That was just what Hank did, to the puzzlement of the ranger. When we were back home in Kelso, Washington, he told some of his friends, and somehow the story leaked out to the paper, and the great hairy ape hunt of 1924 was on. Local reporters interviewed us. They came from Portland and Seattle. Even a big game hunter from England came asking questions, and he had a large gun with him that must have been an elephant gun. Many people flocked to the Mount St. Helens area looking for the great hairy apes or mountain devils. I myself went back with 2 reporters and a detective from Portland, Oregon. We found large tracks and they photographed them. We did not see any of the ape men then, nor could we find the ones that we had shot. Alright, so there you go. There's the incident occurrence, and now I'm going to go ahead and read you this interview that was conducted by Roger Patterson of the famous Patty film of the Sasquatch on Bluff Creek in California. He interviews Fred Beck, so let me go ahead and read that to you. Fred Beck and the other men had been prospecting a claim on the Muddy, a branch of the Lewis River about 8 miles from Spirit Lake, just 45 miles from Castle Rock. The area is now called APE Canyon and is located on the southeastern side of Mount St. Helens in Washington State. The men declared that they saw 4 of these huge creatures, approximately 7 feet tall and weighing roughly 400 pounds, walking upright on 2 feet. They were said to be covered in hair and gorilla/man in appearance. It is said that Fred Beck shot one of the creatures and it fell over a precipice. That night, the creatures bombarded their cabin with showers of rocks, many of them large ones, knocking chinks out of the log cabin, according to the prospectors. After 43 years, Beck decided to document the facts in a book written in 1967 by his son, R.A. Beck, titled, I Fought the Ape Men of Mount St. Helens. Prior to the publication of that book, Beck told his story in a taped conversation with Roger Patterson. And here we go. Now I'm going to read this word for word, and the way Fred Beck speaks here, sometimes it's not correct, but bear with me. It's his English, the way he uses it, not me. So please, don't leave me comments saying, hey, that's not correct. I mean, I'm going to read it just the way he said it, okay? So let's do it. We was mining in there working our claims about 2 years before we had the contact with them. We seen tracks down on the Muddy. We didn't know what they were, thought that probably some big Indians in there fishing barefooted. But we heard rumors. People been up there year before that telling the same thing too. Seen them big tracks up there. One fellow was telling about fishing. He had a string of fish and laid them on the bank, and when he went to get his, and he looked around, there was a great big, like hairy, great fella. Had his fingers and was just smashing them all along the rocks. He come out of there faster than he went in, and nobody believed him. But mind you, my father-in-law that was with me, he believed him. He said that fella didn't lie, 'cause he knew him. He said that fella was scared when he came out of there, 'cause he wasn't no human. Then when we seen them tracks, there we never thought so much about it. My father-in-law was telling about these people he knew, his experience years ago, seeing them tracks up there, and one thing and another. And the Indians, there were lots of Indians around here them days. Them old Indians was afraid to go back in there to Spirit Lake, 'cause they was afraid of the spirit. When we went up there, why, we never expected nothing like that. We heard noises there, whistling, noise like pounding on their chest. Patterson, when was the first time you actually seen one? Fred Beck, well, about 2 years after that we were seeing them. There was a spring a little way from our mining camp. We had to go down into a gully to get water, and there's a ridge. The old man always carried his rifle with him, and when he went to the spring, because he said he'd seen tracks, awfully suspicious tracks, he always carried his rifle. He went down, I went with him, went down to get some water, and we looked up on a ridge. There, about 100 yards away, and we seen this peeking out of this tree. I seen him first, and I said, Marion, look at that on that tree. He looked there, and he just up, and bang, bang, bang. I saw the bark fly, and the bullets were all in just the place, just like that, right around the bark of the tree, just you know how. Patterson, yeah. Beck, so we seen him running down this ridge then, and then he took a couple more shots at him. Marion, when he first shot, I rushed over there. It was hard going. He said, don't run, Fred, don't run. He said, he won't go far. He said, I put 3 shots through that fool's head. He won't go far. So we got up the ridge and looked down there. He was going just a jumping. Looked like it'd be 12, 14 feet, a jump running. The old man took a couple more shots than him, and the old man said, my God, I don't understand it. I don't understand it, how that fella can get away with them slugs in his head. He said, I hit him with those other 2 shots too. Well, he got away all right. Patterson. Well, now, the tracks that you've seen before, you would estimate at about how big? Beck. Well, I'd say 19 inches they measured. You see, the 2 detectives up with us from Portland, and they measured the tracks. It rained that night. We stayed at the lake, a regular cloudburst. We went up there, and we had where we washed out dishes right under the little seepole. You know, springs, you might call them springs, melted snow, kind of a little gully there. We had cleaned our pots out, our beans and rice. It quit raining before we got there. When we went up there were tracks made since it rained, fresh tracks, about 19 inches long. And the detective said, well, these are tracks all right, but he said, who made them? I said, well, who did make them? I said, we was all together, and they had been made since the rain, and they talked about it, and they said it might have been a coon making them, or part human, all that stuff, a bear part human. Patterson, when you finally did see Beck, when you seen him, you know why we heard that noise pounding and whistling. At night they come in there, and we had a pile of shakes piled up there, big shakes. Our cabin was built out of logs. We didn't have rafters on it. We had good-sized pine logs, you know, for rafters. 2-inch shakes, pine shakes. We had them rafters close apart. They was about a foot apart because he said he wanted to make a roof that'd hold the snow. We made one to hold the snow. Them buggers attacked us, knocked the chinking out on my father-in-law's chest, and had an axe there. He grabbed the axe. And the old man grabbed the axe and the logs, and then he shot on it, right along the axe handle, and he let go of it, and then the fun started. Well, I want to tell you, pretty near all night long they were on that house, trying to get in, you know. We kept a-shooting. Get up on that house. We'd shoot up through the ceiling at them. My God, they made a noise. Sounded like a bunch of horses running around there. Next day we'd find tracks anywhere there was any sand on the rocks. We found tracks of them. Question, were those the same tracks that you'd seen? Yes, the same tracks, them tracks, but never measured them. They were big fellas. That was the only track we measured, was them that the detectives measured. Now, did you explain to us a while back that there was at one time that you had shot one? When did this happen? Well, that was the next morning, I guess it was, if I remember that. After the attack? Yeah, we was going down to the tunnel to get some tools out of, well, we had drills and things like that in the tunnel. We was going to clean out and go home. When we went down, I took a rifle with me. We all carried rifles after that happened. Down the ridge there a couple 100 yards. No, it wasn't that far. Why, there was one of them fellas run out of a clump of brush and run down the gorge. And I shot him in the back. 3 shots, and I could hear the bullets hit him, and I saw the fur fly on his back. I shot for his heart, and he stopped, and he just fell right over the precipice. I heard him go donk, zoop, down the canyon. You said he fell into Ape Canyon? Yeah, and the sun came out in the afternoon. The water was really a torrent goes down there. It'd wash anything out that would fall in there, and that's the reason I don't know if they're human or not, 'cause I couldn't kill 'em, and I hit it. Question, well, how would you describe, Mr. Beck, as far as what they look like in their body and their head? Well, they was tall. I don't know. They looked to me like they was 8 feet tall, maybe taller, and they built like a man, little in the waist and big shoulders on, and chest, and their necks was kind of what they call bull necks. You know how they are. No neck at all, hardly. That's about it, and then them ears turns out like ours do, and so big, you know, hair all over. You couldn't tell nothing about 'em. Question, did they have hair on their face, or did you ever? No, let's see, I don't believe they had hair on their face. Question, but not as much as? Answer, no, can't have whiskers. Question, sure, how about their nose? Answer, I couldn't have, but they seem to have kind of a pug nose, flat nose, kind of flat. And their eyes? All I know is we were excited, you know. You don't see very good detail when you're excited. They was no human. Question. They did, though, walk upright. Did you ever see? Answer. I never seen one on all fours. Question. Their arms, probably, was they? Answer. Arms below the hips. Long, I figured. Question. Below the knees? Answer. Yeah, their knees. Long arms and big arms. Question. How about the weight? Answer. Pretty heavy. I'd say they're 600 or 800 pounds. Like you know, estimated, or maybe more. I don't know. I couldn't tell you the weight of them. The way they sunk down in the ground, I'd have some idea about it. I say they'd weighed 800-900 pounds. Questions. After the attack, what happened then the next morning? Answer. Well, we come out of there. Come down, and my father-in-law, he was so excited and scared. I told him he promised never to tell nobody, 'cause I said I wouldn't do. People wouldn't believe it. Don't tell anybody. He says, I won't. But he did. Went down to the lake, and the ranger down there knew him. He was so excited that they found, took him in the other room and talked to him, and he acknowledged what the trouble was. They said they believed him because the old man had been a hunter. They knew him all his life, hunting until no little things would ever scare him, no animal or anything like that. Then he went to Kelso and told some of his friends down there. Then the newspaper reporter gave us a merry time day and night. Question. Had they ever heard of anything before like this? Answer. I don't think so. They really didn't believe it. And then Patterson says, I see. Well, sure, thank you for this interview. So there it is. There's the written interview. And if you guys want to hear this interview in their own words, you guys go on over to the Sasquatch archives. Todd Prescott has these old interviews, and he's got all kinds of old classic information and stories and videos, and he does a great job saving these old things for us. He literally went to John Green, who was a major Sasquatch investigator before he passed away, and got these recordings and recorded this stuff. So make sure you guys go on over to his channel if you guys want to hear this interview for yourselves. It's a little hard to hear because back then when John Green taped this, you know, he was using a handheld tape recorder, things like that, so the audio's not so good, but you guys can hear it for yourselves. So there you go, the Ape Canyon incident and the interview. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What do you guys think about this? This is one of those classic Sasquatch Bigfoot tales that everybody really knows about, and if you guys don't know about it, I'm glad I could have brought it to your attention. Leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. I really like these old classic stories. To me, like I said, they carry a little bit more weight to me because there was no social media around. There was really nothing for these gentlemen to lie about. Why would they make these things up? I really believed that this happened, and like I said in the story there, the reporters went there and saw the tracks and all kinds of things that would corroborate this story. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Reminder, there's some WILLSTAR merchandise out there, so if you guys want to check it out, it's down there in the description. The link would be down there. You guys can click on that and go check out the merchandise if you want. And another thing, I've started a Patreon. If anybody wants to be a Patreon member, by all means, you guys could help me out, make these videos better, even better than I'm making them now, and I could save up some money to go on some expeditions in the spring. So if you guys want to become Patreon members, there's a link on my channel art banner, and I'll put one in the description also. And if you guys become members, you guys have opportunity to get free WILLSTAR merchandise. So just think about that. Oh, one more thing about the comments. I've said this in a previous video, but I'm going to say it again. When you comment, I always try to reply. Now, if you reply to my reply, I might not get that notification. So the best thing to do is leave me a totally new comment. Don't reply to my reply. Leave me a brand new comment. That way it will pop up and I will see it and I'll be able to reply. A lot of times, if you guys reply to my reply, I won't see that notification. So there's a chance that I can't reply back to you. Just wanted to give you guys that heads up. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Trying to grow this channel, trying to make it the biggest and the best Sasquatch Bigfoot encounter channel on YouTube with all your guys' help. That's where we're going to leave it, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button for me. Leave me a bunch of comments. Alright, always remember, everybody, where there is a WILLSTAR, there is definitely a way. and we will talk to you guys later. Take care.